The most recent incident was drones, possibly decoys. These will be RAF Typhoons, so they're very capable air-to-air combat aircraft, which also have an air-to-ground role. They're not brilliantly optimized for use against drones, and that's because the best thing that they would have is an air-to-air missile, which costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to shoot down a drone that have been going up in cost as they become more expensive, but are still fractions of that.
I'm confirming that within days, British fighter jets and a air-to-air tanker behind us will be part of NATO's new airspace mission to defend the eastern flank against the Russian incursions, the Russian actions which have been so reckless and dangerous and unprecedented in recent days.
And that's the Defence Secretary John Healey announcing that the RAF jets are going to be patrolling the Poland border and at the border of NATO. We can welcome Matthew Savill, who's the Director of Military Sciences at the Royal United Services Institute. Matthew, welcome to you.
Good afternoon.
Matthew, do tell us your take on the significance of this news.
Well, this is clearly the UK deciding to participate in Eastern Sentry, and that is part of a broader NATO effort to try and both reassure Poland, but also clearly deter Russia testing the boundaries of what it can get away with. I'd note that UK forces have been doing air policing in Eastern Europe for some years. And in fact, if the attack that took place or the incident that took place the other day had happened at any point up to the end of July, there would have been a previous RAF deployment there. So this is the RAF probably going back sooner than it expected. And that might be an indication of the seriousness with which the UK takes, if you like, playing a role.
So what will be the mission of these RAF jets on patrol? I guess, obviously, to look out for more drones and that sort of thing. But how would you sum it up?
Well, they will essentially be there as part of what is known as a quick reaction alert, which is that they are either up on a rotational basis or standing by ready to launch if there are threats to Polish or wider NATO airspace. Obviously, the most recent incident was drones, possibly decoys. These will be RAF Typhoons, so they're very capable air-to-air combat aircraft, which also have an air-to-ground role. They're not brilliantly optimized for use against drones, and that's because the best thing that they would have is an air-to-air missile, which costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to shoot down a drone that have been going up in cost as they become more expensive, but are still fractions of that. But of course, they would see it as worth it for now to demonstrate NATO's resolve in protecting its airspace. It doesn't sound like this is any sort of operation that would extend into Ukrainian airspace.
No. I mean, that would obviously be a huge step forward and would be seen as such by Russia. I wonder if resuming these air patrols, Matthew, they would discourage or entirely deter Russia from further incursions. I mean, the drones that we've heard about so far were, as you say, comparatively low cost. They were not armed. They were not aimed at targets. And Russia can keep on probing and pushing and provoking.
It can, but I think that NATO would want to send a message that if it does, those drones are going to be shot down. I mean, ideally what it would do is would complement the deployment of aircraft with ground-based systems, guns or electronic warfare that can actually deal with these drones more efficiently. I think you hit upon the challenge, though, which is the use of these kind of systems to test reactions. And maybe if they meet resistance here, the Russians pull back. But that's not going to stop them continuing to launch large attacks on Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians have an excellent record at dealing with these systems. They are effectively jamming or shooting down up to 90% of them, but a small amount are getting through, and the Russians are increasing the volume whilst they continue to sprinkle in more complex weapons like ballistic and cruise missiles.
All right, Matthew Savill at RUSI, thank you. India has sent troops to join the Russia war games as the relations with Washington rather deteriorate. The drills involve missile launches, airstrikes, and come just weeks after Trump hiked tariffs on Indian goods. The Times Berlin correspondent is Oliver Moody. Hello to you, Oliver.
Good afternoon.
Hi. So you're reporting on this in the Times now, Oliver. Do tell us more.
Yeah, so the Indian Defence Ministry has announced that it's sending 65 personnel from the Air Force, the Navy, and particularly from the Army, including one of its elite regiments, to take part in the exercises. It says the idea is to strengthen defence cooperation with Russia and to foster camaraderie between their two countries, reinforcing the spirit of collaboration and mutual trust. And they're going to be doing things like joint command training and tactical drills.
Yes, I mean, just by way of context, as you point out in your piece in the Times, India has taken part in joint exercises with Russia in the past, and this regular exercise, as it's taken place in the past, although there was a change after the invasion of Ukraine. But even since then, there was involvement in those Russian war games.
That's right. It's important to bear in mind the history that although India has spent the past 3/4 of a century in a state of non-alignment, in military terms, it's been pretty well integrated with Moscow historically and has always been the largest or one of the largest customers for Russian arms exports. And this is a relationship that it has upheld. There have been lots of efforts by the Americans and the Europeans to try and woo it towards the West and out of Russia's orbit since 2022. And the point, I guess, here is that to take part in these exercises at this particular point in time, when we've seen these drone incursions over Poland and Romania, when NATO is reinforcing the defences on its eastern flank, certainly seems like a very pointed signal in the direction of Washington.
Yes, I mean, India is one of those countries that conducts a balanced relationship in its relations with Russia, and including trade relations, and with the West, including this country, of course, including the United States, although the US has imposed tariffs of late. What would it mean to the balance of power, the global balance of power, if India were to become a close military ally of Russia, a more active military ally?
Well, the bigger game here is a triangulation from India's perspective between the US on one side, China on the other, and then Russia to its north. And the rapprochement between Russia and China, this kind of ever closer security partnership, does pose problems for India because India has a very long history of worrying about China on its northern and eastern borders. And so it's having to navigate this moment very delicately. And what we've seen very recently is that in response to Trump cozying up to the head of the Pakistani army and announcing 50% tariffs on most Indian goods, it has decided to kind of signal that it's moving more towards the Russian-Chinese axis.
Yes.
But there is nothing to suggest that India is preparing to kind of enter this so-called axis of disruption as a full-blown partner. It's been playing this kind of pendulum game between the blocs really since the 1950s, and I'd be very surprised if it were to give that up now.
So this can be seen then as Prime Minister Modi of India just sending a message to Donald Trump and to the West: just watch your step.
I certainly think that that's how it's supposed to be interpreted. They've obviously calibrated it very carefully. It's not a large detachment of troops they're sending, only 65, and they're east of Moscow, so they are well away from the bits of the exercise that are causing tension near NATO's borders. So it's not a kind of very direct middle finger, but it's certainly a signal towards Washington that India is very displeased.
Okay, Oliver Moody of the Times in Berlin. Really grateful. Thank you.